All right. So this was a very heavy episode. Very heavy. And usually I can go by um, A, A plot, B plot, C plot. Everything is so intertwined that for the most part, I mean, the only thing that's kind of separate, actually, no, nothing is kind of separate. Everything is intertwined. So, let's just start basically from the beginning. So, Eva's back. We see Maddie and Olympia coming into the office. They're still not friends. I mean, maybe frenemies is a word to use for them at this point. And they go through substantial growth in this episode. Probably more Maddie, but both of them undergo substantial growth. So Eva comes under the auspices of helping these nuns, which she does want to help them. What I thought she was a lawyer, but she brought them to Jacobson Moore in New York. I guess because she's visiting, so she can take the case. I don't know if she's licensed in New York, but anyway. So I think she's from the Miami office. But anyway, um, so they talk about the coup. Now, I don't know which way they're gonna go with this. Obviously, if this coup works, we will not see Beau Bridges anymore. Or if we do, it's going to be um it's going to be very even more seldom than we have been. But if this doesn't work, Maddie's out of Jacobson Moore and Olympia has to go over this by herself. So I'm leaning towards the coup is going to work. Now, so they're talking about the coup and Olympia, because Maddie is such a good liar and has been doing it all her life. Granted, not because she likes lying exactly. She does it because she has to. And so, of course, when you have to do something, you become good at it. So she gets Maddie to get partners to find out how they would vote. So she could, gauge what they have to do. Um, but in the meantime, they have this really heady case. It starts off pretty standard. Neighbors do not want this homeless shelter, even though it's run by the church. They don't want it in their neighborhoods. Typical neighborhood issue that they might, in principle, agree with what is being done with the service that's being provided, but it's a not in my neighborhood type deal. So, they are having to deal with this, and Maddie's not handling it well after a while because they go to the hearing and Olympia convinces them enough to have a trial. Okay. So they're getting ready for a civil trial, but there's a raid on the church. And in the raid, they find drug paraphernalia. And Olympia assumes that it must have been planted because Why would there be drug paraphernalia in a church? And the nuns come clean and say, that it's harm reduction, which is a thing that happens in real life. And there are a lot of people who are against it. They're even pissy about Narcan being available in vending machines for free because that just encourages the addict. When no, because a lot of those overdoses are accidental. As was brought up later in the episode with Allison and the flashback to Ellie, you if you're clean for a couple months and then you go back, you do not have the tolerance you did when you were consistently using. That's the case for anything. For hard drugs, for alcohol, for prescription drugs, you can develop an immunity to these drugs. That's why people generally over time have to use more and more. It's not because they want to use more and more. It's just that their body has become adjusted to the dose they were using, so they don't get the high that they used to. Or in the case of prescription drugs like pain medication, it doesn't respond, your pain doesn't respond to the same dose anymore. So, So of course she OD'd very quickly. And so yeah, a lot of people have a hard time with accepting that, like she said, it gave her another chance to get and stay clean, because it's really, really hard, and almost dying is a pretty good motivator. So, yeah. I mean, who knows? If Narcan was available when Ellie was having issues, maybe she would have survived. Maybe she would be clean. We don't know. But, so they have the civil trial, and they try to explain that they should have it based on religious belief, which is another hot button issue that's happening, at least in the US right now, is this idea that there's this idea of religious freedom, that this is my sincerely held religious belief, it's in the Bible, blah, blah, blah. And what pissed me off with the lawyer, the opposing lawyer, is he's like, oh, but it's just an interpretation. Yeah. Why do you think there are millions of denominations? If there was only one way to read the Bible, there would only be one denomination, because why would you need more denominations if everyone agrees with how the Bible should be read, how it should be interpreted, how you should do things? You wouldn't need multiple denominations. You would just need the one. So that was seriously annoying. The fact that the nuns were giving Maddie advice, that didn't bother me, because yes, they coded it in religious language, but basically most of the advice they were giving her was just advice that any intelligent, empathic person would give. It doesn't have to be a religious bent. It just so happens in this case it was. So, So this was a very hard case, like I said, for Maddie. And for a while there, they had Maddie stay home because this was just too hard. She would work on the getting enough votes while she while she was working on the case. Now, one of the questions she asked Maddie before she took her sabbatical was, "What time is it in Italy?" So maybe I'm misremembering, but that Cassidy, who used to be a lawyer, who's now a priest, is that who she was calling in Italy? Is that why she wanted to know what time it was? Because I thought that he appeared before that hearing. So I'm confused. But anyway, um, so he helps Olympia win the case. Now, while this case is going on, Senior, remembering what Gary said about um about Sarah, he wants to make sure that Julian doesn't poach clients. Which, I mean, this guy is just, are they counting the ways of how many ways this man can be a piece of crap? Because he wants Sarah to spy on Julian and get a picture of his date book so he could make sure that Julian doesn't poach clients, even though that he might do something like that because he's a complete piece of crap. But Julian is a sweetheart. So, yeah. Makes you wonder, if this coup succeeds, is Julian gonna even want to leave? I mean, granted, he did call Eva Milk, mother I'd like to kill. However, maybe with Senior out of the way, that maybe things would improve. Who knows? Because we know Eva wants to take over. It's not just a coup to get rid of Senior. I think she wants to take over. Actually, I'm pretty sure she said she wants to take over. Anyway, so Sarah initially, was trying to be diplomatic. I work for Olympia. That would be a conflict. And Senior's like, "Nope, you're doing this." So she wants to ask Billy's opinion at first. And then she decides, forget it. I'm just going to do it on my own. I'm not going to ask for advice. I'm just going to do it. And I was so disappointed. I was also disappointed that she tried to explain that Gary isn't her father, which that kind of bummed me out because I thought she was making progress. Or maybe the revelation that her mother knew Gary before the divorce makes her still dislike Gary. But anyway, so she decides that she's going to try to get the date book. And of course, she goes about it in the worst way. And because this is such a emotional, heavy episode, they had to have one big laugh. And what was the big laugh? The fact that Sarah broke the rosary and it fell on the stairs, and Julian fell down the stairs, slipping on them. And I don't think it was an arm break, because the way his arm was elevated was very, very weird. I guess they were trying to really work up the laughs, because who the hell does that with their arm? Maybe he was hurt more than just his arm, but still, it was just weird. So Sarah was trying to help Julian out. I honestly think granted, she also wanted to have the chance to get the date book. But I genuinely think that she also felt bad that she almost killed Julian. Now, not to the point that she actually wants to be friends with him, or at least at first. But by the end, I think she actually was siding with Julian. Because when she gave Senior, first she tried to tell Senior that he's not going to poach clients. And he's like, yeah, that's not what I wanted from you. So she went back, but we did not see what happened, how she got those photos. So it's possible she told Julian, because she looked nervous. She looked upset. But I don't know if it's because she's pulling a fast one on Julian or on Senior. Because, I mean, she must have seen what a complete ass Julian's father is. So it could go either way. I would like to think that she told Julian what's going on and he either gave her his blessing to take those pictures or they're pulling a fast one on Senior. I'm not sure. Or maybe she just, went behind Julian's back and took those pictures. That's a possibility too. It's just unclear. Hopefully we'll get more information next week. So everything is, of course, nicely wrapped. Well, not nicely wrapped up. We actually see Olympia sort of lose a case. I mean, it wasn't a complete loss. They can keep the homeless shelter and soup kitchen. However, they're not allowed to do the harm reduction. Because even though the judge agreed that, it was moving, but she had to basically go with what the church accepts. And their church went against how they interpreted the Bible. So their decision is, now the way I remember this verse is that where there's 2 or 3 of you, there's a church. Now maybe I'm already remembering the interpretation, not the actual verse. But anyway, so they've decided that they're going to take their ministry to the streets. That it's a street ministry anyway, that they're bringing in whomever needs to stay there from the street. So we're just going to take the ministry to the street, which is great. I mean, we need more people like these sisters. They really care about their fellow human being. And so they're just leaving the church. They're going to leave their ministry to the other sisters, and the 3 of them are going to set off and help more on the street. Kind of like what Olympia and Maddie were doing. Because Olympia's like, we can't find Allison. We need to, search for Allison. She's like, you came to the right person. Because she understands this world. I mean, just because she lived in California, this world is the same thing. The world of the homeless, the world of addicts. It's similar wherever you go. It's just that some places are warmer than others. So they meet this woman, and she is mentioning about some guy who's been following her. So Maddie takes her under her wing. She's like, get in the car. And then she's like, I'm sorry, I have to. Now, I'm not sure what she was doing. It seemed like she was shooting up. And Olympia wanted to kick her out of the car, and Maddie's like, nope, you stay in there. She shoots up, and she promptly falls asleep. So they text Allison, And then we see her at court. And kudos to the writers for finding a girl who looked very similar to Ellie. And it must have been so hard for Maddie. Now, it also ends with Cassidy being a lawyer emeritus, of the law firm. So he still has voting power. And he absolutely loathes Senior. I mean, he already called him the devil early on. So he is like, yeah, I will totally, vote for this. So, now I haven't touched on a couple of things. I'll quickly touch on, first off, Billy. Billy, mentioned that Claudia is pregnant. And she's like, oh, how far is your wife? He could have just stopped at 4 months. He did not have to point out that they're not married, that he had proposed and she said no, and he's like, afraid to ask her again. And the nuns are just like, forgiveness is good. Why don't you, talk to her and maybe. And it's like, why did you just stick it at 4 months and not point out that you're not married? I mean, yeah, technically it's a lie by omission and you are talking to a nun. I do understand that. However, it's easier. I mean, do they really need to know that you're not actually married? But anyway, and towards the end, they talk about how Claudia's like, I don't think we really need to get married. And I guess, they have this heart to heart and they seem to be taking it well. So I think Billy's on the same wavelength that he wants to spend his life with her, but it doesn't necessarily have to be as a married couple. And, so the other small tidbit was Alfie claiming that he's been getting emails every day from Joey, which was thrilling Maddie and Edwin because, that means that Joey is good with his recovery. Well, it turns out he lied. It turns out Joey hadn't been emailing him, that Alfie has been creating those emails simply because I guess he was embarrassed that his father wasn't able to email frequently. And Maddie's like, that's fine. As long as he's focused on his recovery, as long as he's clean, that's the important thing. So we went from harm reduction bad to her being okay with this woman shooting up in Olympia's car. And then we get Julian pointing out, well, actually before this, Julian pointed out that friends are not soldiers. And he basically helped Olympia see, well, the sisters as well, helped Olympia see that, just because, yes, she lied to you, but she did it for a good reason. It's not like she lied just because she wanted to be cruel. There was a reason behind the lies. And I understand that it's really hard to trust someone after you've been lied to so as much and so completely as Maddie lied to Olympia. But at the same time, there was a good reason. It's not, like I said, it's not like she wants to just take down a law firm just for shits and giggles. So, and she finally admitted, well, she said her addiction is their friendship. However, I think her addiction is actually Ellie. She just cannot let go, which I understand she wants justice for Ellie. Not saying she should. It's just, I don't know, it's just that she seems a little obsessed. So maybe, even though she's still going through with this, maybe she's going to become a little less so. I mean, I love seeing the flashbacks. However, it's okay to, two things can be true. You can be missing your daughter terribly and you want justice for her, but you also, can have a life. And you don't have to make everything you do about your child that is no longer with you. So I was really, really hoping when Olympia suggested that, he's really good at being a lawyer and, that when he gets out of here, you should, do that again. I was really, really hoping how at some point that it would drop who Maddie really is. I still think by the end of the season, Julian is going to figure it out. And I really, really hope for Julian's sake because, a lot of sucky things have been happening to him. And his father is actively hostile. Was always actively hostile to Julian. I would love it if he could catch a break. I would love it if it turns out that he and Sarah are actively working against Senior. But and especially since if Sarah did go behind Julian's back, if this coup works, basically what ends up happening is that what Sarah did was literally for no reason. Because what does it matter if Julian has, Senior has his date book? It's not going to matter because he's not going to be working at Jacobson more. Or maybe they'll do to him what he did to Julian, which is demote him. And that he's still going to work at Jacobson more. But I highly doubt they're going to do that. I think they're going to kick him out whole cloth if this vote actually goes through. So now the question is, when are they going to actually hold the vote? So I really, really hope, though, that Sarah didn't go behind Julian's back. That he basically is like, fine, I'm not going to poach anybody. Sure, go for it. Because I just, he wants Sarah to take on his clients because he wants them to have a good lawyer. And it would just be totally heartbreaking if Sarah had violated that. That after Julian showed trust in her and to show that how highly he thinks of her, to then for her to turn around and do that dirty deed. So I'm really hoping that she asked Julian's blessing. It's like, okay, here, take pictures of my date book. So, let's see if there's anything I was missing. I think I covered everything I wanted to this episode. Oh, one more thing. I just have to, I can't be the only one that this happens to, but every time Olympia calls her Eva, I swear I'm hearing evil. And I'm just like, wait, what? I guess because of how Julian calls her Milk. I guess I have that in my head, and the fact that Senior hates her. So maybe that's why, but still, every time I hear Olympia call her Eva, it sounds like evil. So, I believe that is all I have for this video. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.